Alrighty, welcome everybody. Welcome back to the 2021 Spark Animation Festival here in Vancouver, beautiful Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, and to another Meet the Filmmaker series. And I am extremely honored to welcome Aphton Corbin and Eric Langley, the writer, director, Aphton, and producer of 20 Something, which you can see right now streaming on Disney Plus. And I have done that multiple times. And have really enjoyed it. My name is Colin Giles, and I am the head of the School for Animation and Visual Effects here in Vancouver Film School in beautiful Vancouver. It just so happens to be. And I've been spending the last 25 years in the animation industry and have held many different roles across classical animation, 3D animation, and have had many different positions within that too. So I'm always super excited to be involved with Spark. It's such a amazing endeavor that everyone involved with Spark puts together. It's grown so much over the years that I've been involved in it, and of course is now an Oscar recognized festival. So wonderful to have both Aphton and Eric joining us today, taking a break from their work at Pixar today to join us and answer some questions. So for those of you who haven't had an opportunity to watch the film 20 Something yet, it is streaming on Disney Plus. You need a subscription to do that, but also Aphton is featured in the documentary A Spark Story, which I just finished over my lunch hour today and was extremely entertained by that, and really great behind the scenes look at the whole Spark Shorts initiative at Pixar, which we'll talk about as well. So welcome, Aphton. Welcome, Eric. Great to have you here today.
Thank you.
Thanks. Nice to be here.
So, sometimes in these, we start at the beginning of your journeys, but I'd like to start with today, this idea that you have a film, Aphton, that is on Disney Plus. People can go and watch this really personal film that was made at a very large studio. Maybe you can talk a little bit about the film itself, the genesis of the idea. I got a sense that this was a film about, coming into adulthood, a little bit of that imposter syndrome. Am I going to be good enough? It seems like it was a really personal story for you. Maybe you could talk about where that idea came from.
Yeah. So when the Spark Short program first started, it was an interest to a lot of people. And I was kind of like, I'm just trying to focus on being a good story artist. This is my first job out of college. So when I was offered it, I was very surprised and actually hesitant, embarrassed. I don't know what the exact correct word is. A lot of feelings. And I was hit with that imposter syndrome feeling of like, I just got here and I don't have any business directing a film, let alone leading a team. And doing so, I barely just trying to get my job going correctly. So it was like it took a while for me to get up the courage to actually face this and realize this was what I wanted to do. And that theme felt like a good theme to process whilst making the short itself. It was just such a constant feeling, and I felt like it was probably a relatable one. And so as I started to dig into it and dig into like the imposter syndrome tied to my age as well, and the truth of just being young and not feeling like you know exactly what you want to do, it felt like such a strong theme that people really resonated with. So it was a very therapeutic way of dealing with my first time directing.
It's like some self-help while also directing a film at Pixar. Two
right.
birds with one stone, eh?
Yeah. I just keep thinking of it as like, I don't know about a lot of things, but I do know what insecurities. So I could direct a whole film based on that. I think I could do that pretty well.
Well, it's funny because, being an artist, there's another level of imposter syndrome on top of that, other than just being a professional. So multiple levels of that. Maybe Eric, you could tell us about your connection to the story, Aphton bringing this personal journey to it and also doubling up as some self therapy along the way. What was your connection to the story and working with Aphton on this?
Yeah, I mean, I felt the same way. I was producing for the first time. And so, I'm not even sure that I knew sort of the imposter syndrome phenomenon until, we Aphton pitched the short idea. And, you always feel sort of internally like, I'm going through this difficult time, or this is a challenge. Like, I'm the only one that goes through this. And then you have like an opportunity like this either you see a film or you have a conversation or you talk to somebody and you're like, oh, it's not just me. So what I love about this and film in general is just the relatability. I think it's an emotional, funny idea that I think you might look at it on the outside and be like, oh, that's pretty straightforward, but it's really ends up being a deeper thing that I think connects with people very deeply. And so yeah, I connected with it just sort of on an emotional level in that sense, but I was also producing for the first time, and so that was something that I also connected with. I think Aphton and I both sort of helped each other get through that a little bit, because we were both feeling similar things as we were going through it.
Yeah, that shared experience is important. I remember my third animation job was as an animation supervisor or something like that. I just had the same experience. I'm like, why did you choose me? Like, I just got out of school. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. And sometimes do you feel like the sense of maybe naivete that comes with that, even in a studio that has an amazing support system like Pixar? Do you think that maybe helped in the process, where there's almost a I don't know any better kind of thing?
Yeah, well, I think they wanted new voices, new ideas. There's a reason. And everyone who directed films at the studio didn't know what they were doing when they started. There's no way to have that knowledge in advance other than just doing it. So, and after I gained the courage to direct this film, I didn't tell a whole lot of people. I told 2 friends, and I was like, don't tell anyone, and was being really weird about it. And then when I finally announced, it's I'd tell people and be like, okay, so I'm directing a Spark short. They'd be like, yeah, that sounds about right. It feels like what you would be doing next. And I was like, oh, it was this is what's going to happen, and you're going to have people around you to help. No one's expecting me to have all this master skill beforehand. I'm going to learn along the way.
Yeah, it's a great initiative. Maybe you can, the both of you come from your different angles, talk about pitching this idea now in the Spark Shorts initiative, and maybe give us a sense of the structure and the processes in place to allow a safe sharing of ideas and to get personal in this, under the house of Pixar, having this place where you can go and tell these personal stories. Maybe just tell us a little bit about the Spark Shorts program and your connection to it.
Yeah, so the Spark Shorts program is very interesting because we didn't have to necessarily pitch it to anybody. Jim Morris was like, Aphton, would you like to do a Spark Short? And I was like, oh my God, I guess so. Yeah. And then it was like, hey, go do it. And I was like, oh, there's not a cat team I have to answer to, or executives I have to answer to. So it was basically just a huge faith thing of we just want to see what you do. And so out of that, it was me and my team deciding, okay, who are some people that we'd like to, that we trust and that have worked with us before that we'd like to show this to kind of on our own. But the Spark Shorts program is very grass is green, go for it. We just want to see what you could do in this small budget. But yeah, is there anything else you could think of, Eric?
Yeah, I mean, just to add on to what you're saying, just not a lot of creative oversight, which was really refreshing. Like Aphton said, they just said, all right, here is a rough schedule. Here's sort of a rough budget based off of some of the precedent that some of the prior Sparks had set. And then it's kind of just you have your own small crew of 20, 25 people, and you can run it the way you want. We did have screenings where we did show the movie a couple times in its in progress state, and then the notes you get, you can choose to address or not address. It's kind of up to you. And so it really is fertile ground for opportunity for new filmmakers. And a lot of the people that we had working on our project in leadership roles were doing it for the first time. So it's a really great opportunity for a lot of people to just kind of step up in a situation where it's not it's always going to be a little bit of stress and pressure to make sure that you're making something that people really enjoy, but it's kind of hands off and it's a little bit more casual. So I think that's more of a kind of an approachable way to sort of step into leadership roles for the first time.
Right. Yeah, it's like a safety net of many different levels. As a 2D animator myself, that's been the majority of my career. I was obviously attracted to the style of this film and something that you wouldn't necessarily think first and foremost is coming out of Pixar is a 2D hand-drawn film. Maybe Afton, you can talk about your decision to go in that direction, whether it was something you were comfortable with, and kind of like attracting artists to help you on this project using 2D animation.
Yeah, so I love 2D animation. It's why I got into animation. It was because I like to draw. And when you see your drawing come to life, it's very special. And as a student, I just remember there was a lot of, like, CG was a big deal at the time. And so people were excited and saying maybe some extra stuff, but there was a lot of like, 2D is dead, 3D is the future energy, which was like, that feels excessive. I just love it as a medium, and how much you can do with 2D that you know, and make look amazing. And CG is something you have to like continue to breathe life into and make look beautiful. So early on, I knew that was what I wanted to do. I was like, I want to see 2D again, and I want to see how we can do it in a fun, unique way. You know, I think people have very beautiful Disney animation in their mind, and they think of it as classic and or more vintage, and 2D can be anything. And so figuring out our own way to put our own spin on it and, you know, do like a current version was something that was on my mind. And then from a practical standpoint, financially, with our Spark Short budget, there was no way getting 3 kids in a trench coat running around a crowded club was ever going to be a possibility in the time frame that we had. So it just worked on multiple levels of getting what we wanted financially, and also scratching that itch. And then once we put the word out that we were doing a 2D short, the animators just like crawled out from everywhere. They were like, oh my God, I can't wait to do 2D again. And, you know, people love it. And this is where a lot of them started. So they were like, I cannot wait to do 2D again. And so we're very lucky to have really amazing animators that are well-versed.
And not a bad stable to choose from when you're asking, sending out an email around Pixar for 2D animators. Eric, maybe you could talk about some of the challenges that presented, you know, working in 2D and, you know, bringing people together. And also, you know, it shouldn't go without mention that I'm assuming you did this all remotely as well, not just at the studio in Emeryville. So maybe talk about some of those challenges as well.
Yeah, I mean, you know, me personally, I was sort of equally very excited and terrified that we were doing 2D, you know, with a bunch of dialogue, because I was not familiar with the 2D process in the pipeline. So as excited as I was, because I watched all the Looney Tunes, Hanna-Barbera stuff, you know, growing up, Warner Brothers, you know, all that stuff I loved. And so finally I had an opportunity to do it, but I was like, oh wait, I've never done it before. And so, you know, then you start thinking, you're like, all right, well, what's going to happen? I guess I'll just jump in. But, you know, the saving grace is you know, you have your team who a lot of people have done it before. And, you know, Afton's felt very familiar with it, obviously. And, you know, there's only a small group of animators at Pixar to pull from really for this, who do animate in 2D. You know, not everybody does, but there are a group that do. And so, you know, a lot of those animators have had experience on prior 2D Sparks. So there's some experience there. You know, the guy who sort of ran the compositing part of the pipeline for us, Andy, he had a lot of experience. So, you know, you have a team that has a lot of experience. So as the producer, you're kind of like, all right, cool. You know, we had a production supervisor who had a lot of technical experience. He helped us build some tech to make file sharing work at home, you know, specifically for the 2D pipeline, which was really crucial. So, you know, I mean, just sort of the general challenges. I mean, getting up and running from home was challenging, but it happened really fast. People at Pixar are really good. So I think it was like maybe 2 weeks, and then we kind of felt like we were stable. But other than that, you know, I think it's just trying to finish it in time. We only have 6 months to finish these. We extended to about 8 because of the pandemic, but you know, these Spark Shorts are sort of the smaller ship in the harbor. And so we have people, but they're like, all right, you have them, but then you need to give them back at this point because they have to go to features, they have to go to streaming. And so, you know, just sort of the anxiety of like, all right, okay, can we make sure that we get everybody, get it done when we need to, but ultimately like things slip, you need to extend people, you need to iterate. So we were able to extend some people. We were able to, pull on a few extras to help here and there. So yeah, I would say those are some of the challenges. Otherwise, I mean, it kind of went, looking back and everything that I was sort of anxious about, it went fairly smooth. I don't know, Afton, do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think a lot of anxiety came around the crowd shots too, just to say that, because in CG you have a crowds department, and you can just populate some people and have them do things. But it was a 2D thing, so we had to figure out how we're going to animate this large group. So a lot of stress came around that, which was just to the amazing work that both Andy Jimenez and Lucas Pacheco, our animation supervisor, buzzing lead, came up with these great. The first thing that they did when they came on the show is just did like two characters dance cycles, and so we had a bunch of dance cycles that we just repeated and flipped and made look different ways, put filters on them so that they could fall and just feel like a huge mass of dancing crowds that really worked. But that was a huge stressor conversation of like, how is this going to work, and who's in this shot, and are we seeing this guy too many times? Just making sure it felt like an actual crowded club.
I mean, literally for every shot, Afton, you ended up going in and pretty much making a map of like any shot that had crowds, making a map of which background characters we would see where. And then you have to like track that to the entire club to do exactly what Afton was just saying, like make sure there's no repeat characters or anything like that. So that's just a big puzzle that you got to figure out. It just takes time, but we got there.
Mm-hmm.
That's exciting. And I suppose at the end of the day as well, knowing that rather than maybe relying on a festival journey or being, maybe not having the opportunity to be placed in front of one of the big Pixar features, you had this kind of knowledge that your work would be shown on Disney Plus, which has a massive audience now. So do you think there was a sense of energy knowing that this was going to be something that was not just an experiment, it was not just an in-house project, but it really was going to be produced for a really wide audience at this point?
Honestly, no. That's another thing I thought about, or still am thinking about, because I guess to me, it was like, I want to make a short that I'm proud of, first of all. And that like, when I showed them my colleagues, I don't know, that pressure felt more intense because it's like, they're all really good filmmakers. And then we were in a pandemic. And so I was like, let's just try and make this. I don't know what's going to happen. If we can make a short, that's amazing. So I feel like this past year when it actually came out, it's kind of like still kind of hitting me in waves. That's like, oh wait, people can go on to Disney Plus. There's a tile with like our short on it, which is crazy. I guess it's just been an exciting thing to keep remembering that like this is out in the world now. People are watching it.
Yeah, it's fun. It's almost like a treat at the end because like you said, so invested in making the film, getting personal with it, that actually the audience becomes invisible at that point.
Yeah.
So we can kind of track back to the beginning of your journey now, Afton. You were a story artist on Toy Story 4. You're a story artist on Soul. Had a really great contribution to that film, as is highlighted by Pete Docter in the documentary A Spark Story, which is amazing. But I think, myself being in education, working at a school with a large population, the majority of that population now as women, and a huge, great diversity in our student body, which is just so awesome for the different stories and voices that we're getting. Maybe talk about your journey, into school, in getting into Pixar as a woman of color, and now as a director in development at Pixar. I mean, that's a large hill to climb, and probably one that maybe seemed far off for you when you started this journey in school.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure, hopefully it's gotten better, but going to school for animation is still a weird journey. Like, I don't know any one person who's done it the same way as the next. So I was in high school, and we had to go to a different high school because we had moved, but my brother was already in his junior year, so he got a chance to stay at that high school. And that high school he was at had an animation program randomly. And he took it thinking he'd get an easy A, and then realized how hard it actually was. And so he would ask me for help with his homework all the time. And it would make me very upset because I was like, I should be taking this class. And he wasn't really listening and like, oh, whatever. And I'm like, oh, this is what I want to do. How are you taking this class? So I found out a way to take the class. Basically, I'd leave for the last period. It was like a elective period, and would go to that school. My mom would pick me up and I would go. It was Sheldon High School, and they had their animation class taught by Sean Sullivan. And so I was just like, this is where I need to be. This is what I want to do. I don't know what, but we're getting warm. I was like, I think there was one of 3 girls maybe in the class. It was all, a bunch of like little gamer guys, and the room smelled awful. It was just BO for days. And I was like, I remember the first day I went home, I like cried to my mom. I was like, I hate it in there and no one will talk to me. And I don't know. And mom was like, but she, cause she's driving me to this thing. And so she's like, okay, do you not want to do it? Cause this is a lot on her part. I'm like, no, I think this is right. And then, so, learning to navigate awkward teen boys who like comics and talking to them about comics, and they're like, that's not right. Like, I was a lot of me having to prove that I was like, no, I know what I'm talking about. But anyway, just learning, I guess, the basics of like, okay, this is what animation is, and here are schools that teach it. And so from there, going to Cal Arts, which my year actually surprisingly had quite a few women in it. Not a whole lot of diversity, but I guess it was just like we watched Sailor Moon and we watched cartoons, and we want to learn. And so there was that intensity of like, I gotta get into this. I've gotten to this very expensive art school, and I need to get out as fast as humanly possible so I could pay off student debt. That was my mission. And it was like, I'm going to stay there for 2 years tops, get picked up by Disney or Pixar, and just, and my career will skyrocket from there. And didn't turn out that way. Turns out I actually had to stay all 4 years, and I was very stressed. If I could go back in time, I would tell myself, it's going to be okay. I know there's a lot riding on this, but you're going to be fine. And it was just me trying to figure out like what my art style was. There's like, you're getting all this information for the first time, and then you're surrounded by extremely talented people. And so like the short version is just like, I eventually just had to learn to like trust myself and what I actually like, and my experience being unique enough instead of trying to worry about what I thought studios might like. And when I finally did do that, my portfolio actually did become, I had fun doing it for one. And then secondly, I think the studios enjoyed seeing it. They enjoyed reading it because they could feel that off of the work, along with all the stuff that I had learned. And so so my 4th year, my portfolio got me an internship at Pixar, and the rest is history.
And then you just get films handed to you at that point.
I'm skipping a lot of like, me and my classmate would walk from campus. Like there was nothing else in town. So it was like a 15-minute walk to McDonald's, and we just eat our feelings and cry. And like, I'm skipping a lot of like dramatic, emotional roller coaster of like, okay, I have time to go. I can either go to my dorm and like take a nap, shower, or eat, but I don't have time to do all 3. So I have to pick strategically which one's more important. But yeah, it was just a lot of hard work, and it was something that I couldn't not do. Like, I really loved it that much that I knew that I had to keep going, and it was worth it. So yeah, I guess that's the partially what got me there.
your partial journey. Yeah, I think we all still go through the McDonald's drive-through and cry a little bit.
Yeah.
In this industry, that's just part of the journey. Well, we're getting close to our time here with you, and I wanted to end with a question for both of you, and maybe we can start with you, Eric, on this question, and we'll end with Aphton. But having gone through this journey over the last 8 to 10 months making this film, my simple question for you is, what's the biggest lesson you're going to take from having gone through this journey together?
Oh man, that's a good question. The biggest lesson is, I mean, you just can't do this stuff without a team.
Mm.
And I think we're, spoiled in the best of ways at Pixar because everybody is so good at their job that it's kind of impossible to almost put it into words. A lot, you were asking me earlier about, some of the challenges and things that were difficult. I think a lot of those were, kind of assuaged by just the level of talent. I remember Afton, we were worried, we had the film broken into 3 acts, and that's kind of how we had it scheduled. And, we had a certain amount of footage that we needed to be animated over the course of the weeks to make sure we were hitting deadlines. And Act 1 ate up more than half of our schedule. And so I was like, oh my God, we still have Act 2 and Act 3 to do. And Act 1 wasn't even the longest act. But, like it happens on most films, is people need to get their footing, and you start off slow. And then once people start to get the shorthand and understand the characters and understand what the director wants and anticipate notes, and they just start to gel, they just take off. So when we saw the rough animation come in for Act 2, and they kind of hit it out of the park. Afton, I remember you had sort of very little notes and everybody got it. And so at that point I was like, we're going to be fine. This is going to be great,
Right.
So I think that was a big thing for me. Just working with a team. I mean, I don't know. I was so proud of everybody. And Afton, I remember you and I sitting in the theater and looking at it. I mean, I feel like I'm getting emotional now about it, but it's just there's so much hard work and dedication that goes into it. I played a lot of sports growing up. So that team element can be, that can happen anywhere in anything really, in any industry. And so I love the idea of working with a team, especially when you have people who are so dedicated and so passionate and so talented. And looking back on that, it just makes me so proud to have been a part of it. And, it's such a great experience. I want to bring that forward to, anything that I work on, in the future, like that type of atmosphere and environment. I thought was great because we had fun, but we got it done.
Yeah. Just to add on to that, sometimes we were basically the ones who had to tell them, stop, I know you like to make things really beautiful. Give us your 80%, which is hard for some people to do. And we're like, it's finished, give it to us. I feel like just echoing that, if I would have known, when they told me that you're going to do Spark Short, just how amazing everyone was going to be, and basically that I wasn't doing this alone, I think I wouldn't have been nearly as afraid of our team was just phenomenal. And it's I think you think of oh my gosh, I'm going to be directing these people who've been doing this for years. They're not going to want to hear anything from me. And it was the reverse, oh no, I'm working with these people who've been doing this for years and they've got my back, and they're they can help me through this and help pick up the slack or help. Basically, they just made it easy. They were easy people to direct. They listened to what I needed and were able to make suggestions. I was not directing alone. It was the help of so many amazing teammates that really made this thing so smooth.
And we came in under budget.
That's the most important thing. We came in under budget,
which was kind of amazing. We had a great, finance partner, and, she knew all the tricks and where to pull stuff and how to tweak things. And so she was huge, but yeah, we ended up coming in under budget. So it was.
So you had lots left over for the after party through DoorDash, ordering McDonald's.
I know, right? Exactly.
I know that's going to end up being our wrap party, just a bunch of people going to McDonald's drive-through.
Amazing. Mm-hmm. Well, thank you, Afton, and thank you, Eric, for taking time out of your day. It has been a real pleasure listening to you and meeting you. Our thanks to Pixar Animation Studios for giving us this time. And to Afton, thank you for your bravery and for your sharing, willingness to share your story. For everyone watching this, you can enjoy this story 20-something on Disney Plus, as well as a number of other amazing Spark Shorts on the Spark Shorts tab on Disney Plus. And as an added bonus, the amazing documentary that gives you a really good look behind the scenes and follow Afton and Eric's journey making this film through the Spark Story documentary. So it's a great time to have talked to you as this is fresh out there, and I've been able to watch it a couple times, and it's really touching and very personal. And so thank you, and thank you to Pixar for giving you that opportunity as well. Thank you everyone for joining us again here at another one of our Meet the Filmmakers series. My thanks to Spark Animation and the Spark CG Society for allowing me to do this, giving me the time to do this as well. It's been a real pleasure. And so thank you for joining us. Eric and Aphton, all the best and all the best success with this film and in your journey forward there at Pixar. So thank you so much, everybody.